Hello, birds, bees, and bean sprouts besides and between. I'm Renocio, and today I wanted to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, specifically because myself and a couple of friends are starting up a D&D game. This is the first time that I've ever played the game, and honestly, I'm not very familiar with it as a whole. D&D seems to be kind of a big thing right now, and I'm wondering, is it because pop culture is sort of making it a thing? You see it in shows like Stranger Things. Is it because nerdier things are becoming more mainstream, more integrated in pop culture? Or is it because podcasts as a whole are becoming more popular and there's a lot of D&D based or gaming based podcasts out there that are introducing people to the concept or the game? I'm curious about it. I remember when I was in high school, there were a couple people that would play D&D. I always wanted to play with them, but they were always in the middle of a campaign whenever the topic came up. But I don't think it was quite as popular back in, I guess that would be the late 2000s, right around 2010. And lately, by contrast, it seems like a lot of people I know are playing D&D. I think everywhere I look on social media or when I'm just talking to someone in passing, they mention that they're now playing some version of the game, which I think is a really curious sort of thing, that it's becoming so popular and that so many people are becoming invested in it. I feel like it could be because we're all in our mid to late 20s and early 30s and are either actively looking to spend more time with friends and trying to make concrete planning, this is the day we get together sort of setups, or it could be that when we were kids or when we were younger, either we hadn't been introduced to D&D or we didn't have the chance to express ourselves in these sort of highly imaginative ways. I also feel like it could be a bit of a metaphorical sticking your toes in the water of the big pool of original work or original fiction. A lot of the people I know now who are playing D&D as kids or when they were younger might have been really interested in different kinds of fiction. They were part of fandoms of some sort. And it seems like the longer someone's been in fandoms, the more curious they become about what they can do on their own, what they can make up with their own imagination, instead of following sort of the pre-designed blueprint of whatever series they're interested in. I think there's always that sort of curiosity as to what could I make on my own right from scratch and how good would it be? And D&D or any sort of role-playing game seems to be a good step up into that, because you're not doing it entirely on your own. You have a DM who's kind of walking you through it, holding your hand a little bit, but you get to decide the big defining moments and you get to decide what your character does or how they react. I think there's a bit of a freedom to that, and it does feel like a little bit of a stepping stone between being in some sort of fandom-based thing and then making something all your own. The DM for our group had actually wanted to do DMing for quite a while, but never really had the opportunity, at least until he mentioned it to my partner Honeybee and I, who had just listened to the Adventure Zone the whole time we were doing this huge cross-continent trip, and were definitely into the idea. We actually then got him to listen to the Adventure Zone because he was quite nervous on how to run a game, very excited about it, but also very hung up on the technicalities and all the things you feel like you're supposed to know before you start a D&D game. We got him listening to Taz. He blasted through it in about 2 weeks. And I think that sort of style of D&D, the very Calvin Ball based, it's completely random, nothing is truly high fantasy setting, is what we're more or less going to be playing like. I don't expect our story's going to be serious in any sense. For example, we joked about having a special campaign in which we went to a dungeon where everything was slime. Our DM was saying that the characters would be slime, the items would be slime, and somehow even the dice would be slime, though I suspect there's no way to make that happen unless somebody's really invested in making clever jello shots. There's an idea. Every critical failure gets you a little drunker. My own character was inspired by an exhibit that we saw at the Museum of the Rockies in Montana. They had an exhibit all about guitars and other string instruments from around the world. And I saw a tambour, which I don't know if you've ever seen one. It's sort of got a big bowl base and then a very thin, long neck to it. And I remember looking at it and thinking that would be really funny as a weapon. So when it came to inventing a character, I was thinking, who would have the worst time trying to play a very small-necked string instrument? And I figured an orc. Technically, I think you're supposed to have half orcs when you play D&D properly, but screw that. So I ended up with an orc named Temgral, which is commonized to Thimble, who desperately wants to be a musician, is terrible at it, and tends to use their string instrument, their tambour, as more of a bludgeoning object. And the joke sort of spiraled from there. Our entire party wasn't present when we were first establishing some of these characters, but so far we have my orc barbarian Thimble, we have Bridget Leafkindler, who used to be Perfkinder, but is very much into elves and very much wants to be an elf, very excited about magic and how fancy and uppity and graceful elves are, and so has changed her name to try to be a little bit closer to that. She's an 18-year-old human who decides that she's going to go out and see the world and have an adventure. Basically is fresh off the literal boat, just came from an island town and got lost in a forest, and she sort of discovered that she actually has druidic powers. So is very excited about that, but an absolute unit. And our last character, a friend of mine, gets his inspiration from really interesting places. I think his character name actually came off the back of a seed packet for white pumpkins. His character is an elf wizard who's named Album Curcubita, and he's another piece of work. His elf seems to be very interested in biology and wants to taste everything he comes into contact with. We were sort of joking that there was a dynamic building between Bridget and Album, where Bridget is willing to do pretty much anything to get Album to show her the ropes or show her how to be more elfish. We ended up joking around a lot with these three characters, especially once we realized that all of them have a charisma modifier of -1, meaning none of them are any sort of charismatic. Thimble is a little bit intimidating because they're big and an orc, I guess, and an outlander too, but generally speaking, the charisma trio has no charisma. And we also discovered that all three of them, for their respective races, are quite young. Bridget is basically just of age as an adult. Album is in his first 100 years or so, which is quite young for an elf. And Thimble is actually only about 12, but for orcs, they come of age about age 14. They just decided they were going to leave home early and start their musical career as quickly as possible. So already there's a potential campaign arc name there, 3 Idiot Kids in the Woods. We have 2 other people who are going to be joining the party. It sounds like they might be signing up as a tiefling rogue and maybe also a paladin. I'm not sure what race, but we should have an interesting party. The paladin might be our one saving grace when it comes to ability or charisma, but we're definitely having a laugh with it, and I'm excited to see where the story goes. Maybe it's a little bit too early to be doing so, but we've already sort of established a couple of ground rules for how things should run, mainly that at the end of every battle, whether by using it as a weapon or just out of excitement, Thimble is going to smash their tambour, meaning Album is going to have to conjure them a new one for each new day. So excited to see where that goes. So for anybody who's stuck around for this whole ramble, thanks for hanging out. And I've got a question for you. If you've played D&D before, what's the funniest character that you've run into, be it an NPC or somebody in your own party or a different party? Feel free to leave a comment below to let me know. I'm super curious. If you're feeling a little shy, feel free to just hit that like button. And if you want to hang out some more, feel free to subscribe. I'll be putting up some more videos like this in the near future. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll catch you next round.